CGC did not charge me anything extra to have these vintage comic books graded. I wonder what that means. Hey there, today I have a CGC unboxing, and in this video I'm going to open up a shipment of 8 vintage comic books that were graded by CGC. I always hesitate to use the word vintage because I think of vintage being like golden age, just super rare, super old comic books. But according to CGC, anything before 1975 is considered to be vintage. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm creating all of these queues and lanes for my comic books in terms of what do I want to do with them, and have a number of them set aside. And this is an example of certainly a set of pre-1975 books. And these are also books that I sent to the comic doctor for his cleaning and pressing process. And I'm really excited to open these because it's a really nice mix of, I would say, books that will remain in my personal collection, really regardless of grade. And it's why I sent some of these books in, is these were my only copies of these pre-1975 comics, and I wanted to get them slabbed, preserved. And then some other comics got in here in terms of some recently acquired books that I picked up at auction. Now, one of the books in particular, I was actually hoping that CGC would hit me up with an additional bill. What happens sometimes is if you submit a book at a very specific tier, which I always just pick the basic tier based on the age of the book. It's either going to be modern or vintage, and I submit. I'm not submitting a lot of like Hulk 181s or FF number 1s, so I never really have to worry about that. But if one of these books hit a particular grade that pushed the fair market value into a range that CGC thought would be required to submit under a different tier, one of their more expensive tiers, or something where they take a percentage of the fair market value, then you'll see an additional charge on your credit card, or you'll be invoiced that separate charge or upcharge for that book. Now, I don't know if I agree with that process. I think that assessing the fair market value of the book, I don't understand that completely. I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here because I've been waiting to open these books for a while now and I want to get to it. But what I will say is I don't really understand how CGC assesses fair market value, or why they should even be in the business of caring about it at all. Believe me, I understand that not every vintage or modern comic book is the same. But if you are submitting a Hulk 181, who's to say really what the precise exact fair market value of that book is so that they can charge you? If they look at some system and maybe the FMV wasn't updated for a couple of months, it may be higher than the fair market value of the book once it gets back into your possession, and then once maybe you decide to keep it for a couple of years and sell it down the road. Well, you've paid this fee as if you're going to turn around and sell the book immediately. So I don't always think that is fair to collectors who are just submitting their books, especially for collectors that want to keep some of these books in their personal collection that have really no desire to maybe ever sell them, or not sell them right away at least. So they're paying this sort of penalty for what the market value is for this book. And I wonder, like, how does this affect the process at CGC? Are they really going through and handling the book differently? Are they maybe not throwing the book around as they would some other comic book that they realize, oh, this isn't a key, I can do whatever I want with it? Of course, I'm kind of half joking there, but hopefully you understand my point, is that I understand when you see something significant, you see a holy grail of a comic book, you're going to look at it differently, you're going to treat it differently, you're just going to collect it differently and decide ultimately what you're going to do, keep it or sell it differently, display it, and so forth. And I just find it a little bit awkward that the fair market value is sometimes reviewed in terms of trying to figure out which tier the comic book belongs to. Now, I am also nervously talking because I want to get these books open and see what the grades of these books are. I did not look. I don't know what grades these books receive, so you're going to see them for a brief moment before I see the grade. Once again, these were all cleaned and pressed by the comic doctor who I absolutely love working with, and I always appreciate an opportunity to send him some books to work on. I think the time has finally arrived. Let me get this opened up and show you which 8 comic books I sent to the Comic Doctor to then get graded by CGC. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at the books that I sent in. Here we have Strange Tales, number 142. This is from 1966. So yeah, it's vintage. It's, I mean, I don't know why I was saying that it wasn't, but for some reason I just don't feel like my books are worthy of having that label, but here we are. This is a fantastic Jack Kirby cover, written by Stan Lee, interiors by Steve Ditko. I mean, just the heavy hitters of this age of Marvel Comics. I picked this up at auction from Infinity Comics, and I remember when I picked it up and assessed it once I got back, I was just like, this is actually a really nice copy. And so this was one of those that I had picked up recently, is not part of any sort of original collection of mine, or any books that I had picked up long before I had made the switch to looking at their auctions. And again, I just thought this is a really perfect book to send to the Comic Doctor. In terms of like my cues, trying to work with multiple pressers and figure out what I'm going to do with books, one of the things that I do is just isolate these sort of pre-1975 books that would benefit from a clean and press, and I set those aside and have sent my last few submissions to the Comic Doctor to work on these. I would say particularly too because these are books that, because they're vintage and they're so old, I don't know really what I'm going to do with these books for the long term. And so I don't mind waiting the additional time that it takes to ship my books to Canada, for the Comic Doctor to send the books from Canada to Florida, and then obviously back to me. And then even the vintage grading timeline, it does feel like CGC takes a little bit longer to grade vintage books in terms of the modern books that get turned around pretty quickly. But these books are not books that I come across in terms of my own collecting very often. So let's just see what grade this one got. To start us off, Strange Tales 142 from 1966, and it got a 9.2 off white pages. I'm going to be happy with any of the grades here. I mean, again, to get a book like this in a 9.2 for the age, it does have some color breaking and some color loss along the spine, but I really just thought this was a book in tremendous shape, and to get anything above a 9 from this era is really nice. It does have a really nasty spine roll, but I just didn't feel like for this specific book I wanted to have the Comic Doctor spend the time to fix the spine roll, so I just kind of let it go. I had him fix my X-Men 94, and I think that was worth it. Looking at it again, maybe it would have been worth the extra investment just from a presentation sake, but overall, I think it's still a very, very nice, very, very presentable copy of Strange Tales 142 in a 9.2 off-white pages. So strong start here for this submission. I love that Jack Kirby cover with Nick Fury on the cover. Awesome. Okay, next is another Strange Tales book, Strange Tales 138 from 1965. Now, this was the book that I was maybe a little naive, but I was really hoping I would get that extra charge on this one. When I got this back, I reviewed the book and thought, okay, to me, it probably caps at most, even if all things go well, a 9.6. And I know that was probably wishful thinking, but I was also like, does this have a chance at getting a 9.8? I didn't know, but I figured if there's anybody that could work their magic on the book, it would be the Comic Doctor on this one. And I really just felt like it would be worth sending it his way to take a chance on it. Now, when I'm assessing these books too, again, I'm thinking about the potential. And I had the potential ceiling of this book maxing out at a 9.6. But typically, they're all in that sort of very fine range. Not necessarily specific to a grade point, but around the 8.0-ish. 8.0, 8.5, 7.5, 8.5. Somewhere around there is kind of where they land when I receive them, especially of this era, this age of book. It's just going to have some sort of aging to the book that you just can't escape. even if there are very few like color breaking or color loss areas of the book, there's always going to be some sort of wear and tear and age to it. So that's where I'm looking at it. And then what I try to judge is what is the potential. So I didn't get an additional charge. And what that meant to me is this book did not get a 9.8. But I am curious to see what the grade ended up at for Strange Tales 138. This being a key, as this is the first appearance of Eternity, a character, a cosmic being that was rumored for Thor Love and Thunder. I don't know if you consider it a cameo appearance or a full appearance in the movie at some point, but maybe not used to the full extent of the comic book character version. But nevertheless, an important cosmic, godlike character in the Marvel Universe. But here we go, the first appearance of Eternity in Strange Tales 138. And it got a 9.6. That's exactly what I thought. Wow. Amazing. Now, boy, I thought this book was close to getting a 9.8, but it's stunning. Gorgeous. Great job, Kevin, the comic doctor, on this one. Tremendous. Boy, this just looks nice. It is a 9.6 off-white pages. So was the 142, given an off-white designation. But boy, we're looking at just very specific. Yeah, and I still remember, here's my 3 like hairline color breaking ticks along the spine, 1 little nick on the outer edge, but I was just really surprised and impressed with like how sharp the corners were. And wow, I mean 1965 to get a 9.6 on a Strange Tales key. Super lucky, super fortunate. Thank you so much here. 9.6 on this one. So I was really hopeful that that was going to be the case, that if it didn't get that 9.8, that my assessment of a ceiling on the book was accurate, and it was. I was like, is it a 9.4, a 9.2? Should I be more realistic? I feel like when I submit Strange Tales, the original Strange Tales books to CGC, they all come back 9.2. So when I saw the first one at 9.2, I was like, I'm going to have a really nice collection of 9.2s, which is a great grade for books from the mid to late 60s, and I'll take it. But really happy to get that 9.6. That's awesome. Now I'm going to have to move on to the other 6 books in the submission without, looking back at that one. Here we go. Fantastic Four 57. I don't even know if I can describe this to do it any justice whatsoever. It's Doctor Doom. It's Jack Kirby. It's from 1966 as well. I will say that I picked this book up from Heritage Auctions really early on when I got back into comic book collecting around 2019. Hard to believe that it's been 5 years now that I've been in this phase of collecting. And I remember when this book got put up at auction, I got it in a lot, which I'd like to focus on. I don't do a lot of bidding on Heritage anymore, but when I do, I typically look at comic book lots. And this was in a lot of a few issues. And I got it before this cover really became more mainstream or recognizable. I think I got it right ahead of the curve on this one. But I've always loved this cover and figured the one copy that I have is probably the only copy I'm going to have. And I wanted to get it not only graded, but hopefully improved a little bit to try and maximize the grade on it, because this is going to be a keeper for me. So I'm really curious to see once and for all Fantastic Four 57 from 1966, this great Jack Kirby Doctor Doom cover, and it got an 8.0. Fantastic, pun intended. This is great. So the lot of books that I picked up from Heritage was advertised as like a lot of fine or fine minus books. So somewhere in that 5 to 6.0 range. And those were the types of Silver Age comic books that I was really targeting on Heritage. I was looking at specifically like 6.0 grade books raw. Because to me, then they would have that potential down the line if I wanted to maybe get them cleaned and pressed to have them bumped up beyond the fine condition. And it was really kind of an opportunity cost for me, because very interested in these books for many reasons or obvious reasons, but also it was a grade for the books raw that fit my budget. So it did take me a while, as we are here in 2024, to actually figure out what to do with this book. But it took me a long time to find reliable, trustworthy pressers for me to work with. It was a lot of trial and error. I tried pressing my own books. And once I felt like I kind of settled in with my pressers, then I knew that this would be a great opportunity to finally get this book graded. This specific copy I've always loved. It's very well centered. The colors really strike on this one. They really kind of pop off the page. You have the dark blue space in the background, the Fantastic Four on the cover with Silver Surfer and Doctor Doom front and center. One of my all-time favorite Fantastic Four covers. Super happy to get this back in an 8.0 off-white to white pages. All right. So far, this is definitely exceeding my expectations. So this is a really good thing, a great start to this submission. Very happy. And let's keep moving with Conan the Barbarian number 14. This is from 1972. This was one that maybe the spreadsheet told me you need to do something with this book. Not necessarily an expert on Conan books. I think I joke every time I'm in these situations that I'm not a Conan collector, and then I talk about Conan frequently. And so, yes, I am a Conan collector, and I'm learning about which books are keys, which books are valuable, why they're valuable, creators, stories, characters in the Conan universe. This one also I picked up at auction and felt like had a good chance, really nice sealing on this, pressable defects and so forth. So kind of checked all the boxes in terms of a book that would be worthy of submitting for improvement. And also it checks the boxes for things that I like to collect. 20-cent covers, Barry Windsor Smith on cover art, has that classic framed cover, an all red cover. So there's a lot of collectability in terms of the properties of the book. So let's take a look and see what Conan the Barbarian number 14 from 1972, what grade CGC gave it. Gave it an 8.5. Okay. Probably a little bit lower than I had hoped on this one. I think what I was projecting in terms of values were probably at least around a 9.2, hopefully a 9.4. So this one's a little bit disappointing, not in terms of the work that was done to the book, but just looking at the color breaks around the staple, probably just too many. Yeah, I do feel like if I was comparing it to other books, 8.5 is probably fair. I was going to say maybe it should have got a 9.0, but I think an 8.5 is fair for this book. I think for me, what I probably should have done a better job at is the front of the book looks a lot cleaner than the back in terms of color breaks. On the back, around the staples and along the spine, I'm seeing a number of ticks, and then also I think too much corner wear on the bottom. So 8.5 is definitely a fair grade on this book. Probably something that maybe I overreached a little bit in terms of my expectations for a ceiling on this one. But again, 20-cent cover, Barry Windsor Smith, Sal Buscema on interiors, and Barry Windsor Smith on cover art here. And I think also a good experiment for me, continuing to learn. Do I want to trust these spreadsheet formulas? Do I want to really make sure that the book has that potential to get into the nines, into those value grades and conditions? But again, I think the grade that CGC assigned to it, very fair for this book. All right, halfway through, moving on to the second half. The next book we have is another Conan book. This is Conan the Barbarian, number 19. This is from 1972 as well. Really kind of the same story as before, so I'll get to the grade a little bit more quickly on this one. But 20-cent cover, framed cover. This has kind of an aqua blue cover, which also will pick up spine ticks because of that solid color. But I really thought that this was more or less tick-free. Really good structure of the comic. Barry Windsor Smith on cover art. One of a small handful of artists that really, I think, are who we think of when we think of Conan the Barbarian. Let's see what the grade Conan 19 got from 1972, and it got a 9.4. Very good. And that was the grade that I thought that the other one had the potential to get. But this is great. 9.4 on this book is tremendous for the age and the fact that it is a 20-cent cover. And I like the color choices on this one just being a little bit different. A little bit of a kind of a faded pastel-like color scheme here. Yeah, sharp corners on this one. hard for me to tell exactly why it didn't get higher than a 9.4. Maybe one or two bits of color loss on the bottom corners, but for the most part, pretty strong book. A little bit of a, it's not a tear, but it's an issue right by the top staple. Almost as if the staple was pushed a little bit there. But for the most part, very nice high-grade copy of Conan number 19, getting the 9.4. So that one probably exceeded expectations and definitely got the grade bump up from my initial assessment. All right, next book, Human Torch number 1 from 1974. Another book I won at auction. Wasn't really targeting this book. It's another one of those where this is would say it's kind of a result of my formula. The formula going completely end to end, where I'm researching the values, I'm plugging in what I think are my minimum and maximum bid ranges for a book. I'm plugging in my bid, I'm sticking to that bid and not going over, and ended up winning this book because of the potential improvement that the book could receive, and then if it could receive that improvement, obviously a value improvement as well. So this is the first issue of the Human Torch series, obviously his first solo series of this era, with Sal Buscema and John Romita on the cover of this one. So let's see, Human Torch number 1 from 1974, and it got a 9.2. Very respectable grade, that's fine. Again, I'm thinking about sort of my target grade for like this book, for it to have the kind of value add that I was hoping for. And for this one, 9.4, maybe 9.6 on this. What I was hoping was that the fact that it was slightly miswrapped, I was hoping that the white from the back cover kind of being wrapped around would have protected the spine a little bit, but I can see there is enough color break on the sides and a little bit across the top too, just a nicking of the top between Marvel and comics that certainly would bring it down. But still, 9.2, off-white to white pages on this one. The back looks super clean, which is awesome, so I appreciate the work on this one that the Comic Doctor put into it. Really awesome. I love seeing these pre-1975 books get back in this high grade. Tremendous. The flaming first issue, Human Torch number 1. Okay, we have 2 more books to go here. The next one is Fantastic Four number 87. This is from 1969. More Jack Kirby cover interiors and Stan Lee on story of this one. And similar to the other Fantastic Four book, it just felt like it was time to start going through these books in my collection. They had just been sitting there for quite a while. I had indicated that they needed a bit of a clean and press to help out the condition, but they were just sitting in these back bins. And one of the things that just kind of makes me nervous after a while is if I have these books in my back issue collection, in my personal collection, but I've indicated that they need a little help, I need to start taking action on these because otherwise they're just going to sit in there. I get kind of frustrated with myself, frustrated with looking at these, because the anxiety of just knowing that it needs to kind of go through a process and have some work done to it, it just sorts of builds up with me. So I like to start processing these and getting them out, and thought this was, again, great time to start sending these out and sending them to the Comic Doctor. Let's see what grade Fantastic Four 87 from 1969 got. And it's my lucky number, 9.2 off-white to white pages on this one as well. This one really looks great. There's definitely some corner where it's slightly miswrapped, but for the most part, just a very, very nice high-grade copy. The back does have, it looks like a little bit of foxing on the bottom, and that's probably what prevented it from getting anything higher. I don't feel like this is a really strong, hard and fast rule by CGC by any means, but it does feel like if you have like a Silver Age book that looks like it could be a 9.8 by itself, but it has some maybe light foxing or staining to the back, otherwise it's almost like it's an automatic 9.2. I've had a number of these books get graded by CGC where it's just, we're going to slap a 9.2 on it, because I'm looking at the book and yes, it's not a 9.8, I understand that, but the corners are just not quite as sharp as they need to be. The spine looks very nice. I don't see anything, there aren't any ticks along the spine. They're all gone. If they were there, the comic doctor worked his magic, they're gone. The outer edge, sharp, page, top and bottom, sharp all around, back is clean, but along the bottom has some very light foxing. So just trying to keep that in mind. If you have a book like that, that's probably maybe the max in terms of what the book can get. I think without the foxing, this is probably a 9.6. I think that CGC would still ding the book for the corner wear, but for the most part, a really very nice, presentable Jack Kirby cover of Fantastic Four 87 from 1969. Oh man, can't wait to display these. Just lots of great comic book nostalgia. The last book in the submission is another Fantastic Four book, Fantastic Four 97, another book that I'd had sitting around for quite a while. Same story as FF 87. This one's from 1970. And really, this is kind of the end game. This is the end result of me researching and acquiring books like this over time and finally deciding to go ahead and get these books graded and spending the additional time and investment to send them to the comic doctor to max out the grade and the condition to make them as presentable as possible. The back looks tremendous, super white, really nice, clean copy from the back. So I'm excited to see which grade this got. Fantastic Four 97 from 1970, and it got a 9.4. So moving away from my lucky or unlucky 9.2, very nice. The monster from the Lost Lagoon, not necessarily a key, but a key in terms of just a Fantastic Four collector, Jack Kirby cover, and super awesome to have this one in high grade as well. The colors, just like on FF 57, they almost leap off the page. Really fun Fantastic Four cover with the members of the FF hanging out on vacation on the beach, and then still they get no breaks. Thank you, Comic Doctor, for working on these books on my behalf. I'm super happy with the results. Very cool to have all of these books in high grade. The Conan book that I got the 8.5, it always feels like there's one whiff or one miss, and that's not a miss. Just, again, my expectations are really high of myself, and so I want to make sure I'm getting the highest grade possible. That one, looking back on things, of course, now that I know the outcome, and hindsight's 2020, I'm looking at that one, kind of questioning why I sent that one in, and want to make sure that, my formulas are really helping guide me through this process. But still, all of these 8 books, cleaned, pressed by the Comic Doctor. You can check him out at thecomicdoctor.com. And remember, if you are a U.S. customer, if you send him 10 or more books, he will pay shipping for you. He will send you a shipping label so that you don't have to pay for shipping. Obviously, this being 8 books, this was before that, so I paid my own shipping to get these books to him. So going forward, I will definitely be sending him a minimum of 10 books per submission, but really appreciate all of his hard work, his team's hard work to get these books back safely into my possession. Really happy with these results. I think the grades were very fair from CGC, so I will take these and can't wait to enjoy them, add them to my collection, display them, and so forth. Thank you for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.